Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Big Tech Talks with your hosts, me, Colin, and Pawel.
Yeah, the big tech talk guy.
We're the
Big tech
we're
guy.
we're big tech talk guys, big guys doing tech talks. So today's episode is kind of a fun one. We decided that we were going to compete. Me being a total newbie developer and Pawel being the absolute expert pro. We decided to see who can build a to-do list faster. And I am going to be using our friend ChatGPT, using AI to help me build the to-do list. And Pawel is using his expertise to get him by. And we're going to see just how long that takes and what that process looks like.
Yep,
So,
I gonna be using my old-fashioned skills to develop an application.
yeah. So this is a great, this is really exciting. We talked about this a bit and we really wanted to see what this would feel like. And I think this is great for new developers and old developers to see how we can integrate these new technologies into, future workflows. So yeah,
Enjoy.
enjoy. All right. So we're going to get started and we're going to see just how quickly I can create a to-do list. We are going to see how quickly I can create a to-do list with ChatGPT. So let's first start. I got to race against the clock here. I think I should be able to make this faster than Pawel. First thing I think I should do is just tell ChatGPT I want to make a to-do list and what language I'm using. I'm using JavaScript. So let's start with that. And I'm always polite with ChatGPT, so I start with, can you help me? Let's see. I know I want to have help with each aspect of it, right? So we should do HTML, CSS, and of course JavaScript. I'd like to have help with the HTML, CSS, and of course the JavaScript. Let's see how it does. I want to say, I'm going to tell it to make it for me, not help. Can you make me a simple to-do list app in JavaScript? I'd like to have help with the HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript. Let's see how it does. All right. So we're off to the races, and we're going to test this as soon as we plug it in. So let's open the index.html. Let's see just how fast this can be. All right, we're going to save that. All right, let's go to the CSS. That's going to take a second. This is already going nice and smooth so far, which I like. Looks like this will be a piece of cake. I wonder if we're going to run into any unforeseen issues. All right, we got that part. Let's just take a look and see how it looks right now. Look at that. We already have everything essentially that we need. Let's add the last part. All right. And let's reopen that. So my first thing I needed to do on my to-do list was make a to-do list app. Let's add. Oh, it's not working. Maybe I didn't add enough. So it didn't actually add. Now I haven't really looked at the JavaScript here. So let's look inside for a moment. Document.getElementById. If task length is greater than 0, add task. Talking again on my idea, input value. Okay, that's looking good. Task. Let's check real quick to make sure the elements here are. I don't know if we've actually added the. No, we got it right here. Let's look right here in the HTML and see if we have our app.js. It's simple issue. We need to put the correct name, right? This is script.js, and we should also take a look at the styles. I did call it styles.css. That's a typical naming. I called it script.js. So that might be our issue. Let's take a look. Oh, we do have some red flags. But before let's just see if we can get it to work. There we go. Finish to do list. Okay. And look at that. Now, I'd like to take this one step further because now we have an app, right? But I want to see if ChatGPT is going to do a good job of adding on to this and keeping track of the context. So far, we basically built this app in about, looks like we built this in about a minute or two. So I want to add to this just a little bit. I'd like to add a finished list section that shows all the tasks I've done. My to-do list. I'd like it to show up below the to-do list. And I'd like a timestamp. Help me modify the existing code that you already wrote. And let's spell modify correctly. All right. So let's start with the HTML. So all we have to do is add this in. And we should probably put this, I don't think we're going to want this inside the div. It'd probably be easier. Maybe we do want it. I don't know if that makes much of a difference. I'm going to put this inside of our div because it says remaining HTML there, and it doesn't quite say. I think we can fit it in here. So I'm just going to put that right there. Do a quick save, see how it looks. Okay. Looks all right. So we've got some updated JavaScript. So we've added quite a bit. This update adds a finish button. You can finish style and expand. Okay. Let's see here. So it's a lot of the same stuff. Document get element by ID, add value click function. Let's kind of just open this up. Maybe let's do this just a little bit. Oops. And I want to zoom this over here. Okay. I don't know if there's anything I need to. So we have our add task function.
I think we can just take this whole... So without really looking, should I replace the old JavaScript with this one, this new one? Got it. No changes need to be made to the styles. Okay, so we're totally the entire content. Okay, which is kind of what it looked like, but I'm trying to be as lazy as possible with this. All right, so we're gonna click save, and let's take a look at our to-do list. Finish to-do list. Look at that. Finish to-do list. And let's add a few more tasks. Read a book. Oh, it doesn't work with enter. All right, read a book. All right, we got our timestamp 9/5/6:18 p.m. Look at that. And we can click delete here. Oh, the delete button doesn't work. Does this delete button work? That does. Let's tell ChatGPT that didn't work. The delete button on under the finished tasks title didn't work. I apologize for the issue, is because when we move the task to the finished list, we're still referencing the old parent task list in the delete button event listener, even though its new parent is finished tasks. Here's the correct JavaScript. All right. In the above code, I tried to delete the delete function and a new helper function, delete task. So we can easily reuse it for both the initial task and the finished tasks. Should I write, let's do this again. Should I replace the entire old JS with this? Not the entire old JS, just some parts of it. I'll guide you through. Add a new helper function, delete task at the end of our app. Okay. So let's take this right here. We're gonna take this at the end. New helper function, save. Modify the add task function to the delete button event listener to use the new helper function. Replace this delete button dot add event listener, click. Let's look for that real quick. Where is that? Let's look here. Oh yeah, I'm gonna look over here. Ah, there you are. Oh, wait. Why can't I find this delete button? This is the only place that has it, but it doesn't look correct. This says delete button. query selector. So these are slightly different. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. What should the entire JS file look like now? I'd like to just copy and paste from you. So we're just gonna wait for this to finish up. And I think we'll be okay. This was kind of, again, trying to be as lazy as possible with this. Okay. You can copy paste the entire content. All right. Let's take it for a spin. Let's click save and let's go right back here. We're just gonna write test. We should be able to add. We're gonna finish that task and let's delete that task. Look at that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, so we started with a to-do list, made that in no time at all. Then we added to that list, we added some more functionality, which showed to be just a little bit, a little bit challenging, but nothing too crazy. Obviously, ChatGPT does get confused, even with the, as amazing as this thing can be, it does get, it can get stuck. And also, I'm trying to pretend like I have the least amount of experience possible. I don't have a ton of experience, but I'm trying to pretend like I'm someone who has as little possible knowledge and is just trying to work with this. And this, took us all of maybe, 15 minutes in total to do this whole thing, and probably even less. So not bad. Nice little use of our friend ChatGPT here. I am using ChatGPT 4. I'm using the premium option. So might do another test later on to see what it would be like with 3.5, just to do a comparison. But so far, not bad. All right, Pawel, it's up to you now. Let's see how fast you can do that.
Colin has its own adventure this time. Our goal was to create a to-do item application that we both can make. Colin is using ChatGPT to help him with coding. I will use my 17-something years of experience as a software engineer and a designer instead. We weren't precise about how each of us would approach the problem, and we had the freedom to use the tools and techniques we liked. Mine was to do this as any other project. I started with design. I created a Figma file where I started putting my ideas. I used material design as it is the one I know best, at least its versions 1 and 2. It also offers UI-based components, so I can use them to start developing the application without thinking about the design system and interactions too much. I design an empty screen as the one that the application renders when there are no to-do items, since I decided to use the new release of Material U or Material 3, I had to refer to the documentation while designing its screen. After getting the empty screen ready, I moved to design the editor that would allow me to edit a to-do item. My initial idea was to put a section on top of the page that shows up when the user clicks on the Add or Edit a to-do item buttons. It will take me 2 or more days to figure out it wasn't the best idea. Another wrong assumption I made is that I would make my own Figma components for the base UI components like buttons and inputs. It was unnecessary, and soon after I switched to a Figma library for Material U. It definitely sped up my work, After that, I started working on the design of a to-do item itself. It should have different states depending on whether the item is currently selected or whether it was completed or not. After having this ready, I could put those together into an application view. I also added prototype wiring so I could click through a prototype to make sure I would make fewer mistakes during the coding phase. Now it's time to start coding! I used the app generator from the OpenWC or Open Web Components library available through the npm init command. After updating dependencies, which in this case is just my OCD talking, in under 5 minutes I got a web application up and running. It was a boilerplate, of course, but I would spend at least half hour or an hour doing this manually. I started coding by copying CSS files that the Material U theme builder generated. I created this theme at the very beginning before even starting the design. Because Material U is still very new, they have yet to release a stable version of Web UI components. I used their pre-release library, which has minimal support just yet and a very little documentation. So little that I had to consult with source code several times to understand how anything works. But they already released support for Flutter and Android. Fortunately, they have limited documentation on their GitHub repo for web components. I started the implementation with the app's general layout and the empty screen. After having this done, I started designing the persistence layer. I chose the IndexedDB through the IDB library, which I personally love. It is a wrapper over the native IndexedDB API, which is callback based instead of using promises. The IDB library adds the promises and handy shortcuts to the API. It also works well with TypeScript if you properly describe the data as interfaces. It takes the development of any persistence layer based on IndexedDB to a new level. After defining my data schemas and general structure, I started implementing the persistence layer and the functions like opening the database and handling data store creation. Then I implemented store logic, which includes adding a new item, updating an item, marking it as completed, or deleting an object. While marking a task as completed and bug is an update operation, I prefer to have a helper function that does that for me instead of repeating code in several places. As a final part of my data store, I use the Broadcast Channel API to communicate changes to a to-do item done by the store. This way, I have a centralized place for sending events about the data change instead of managing change notification from different locations. Having this ready, I started building the logic behind my main application. I added an initialization state, which for now will be a simple progress bar. I used Figma's dev mode, which generates a lot of code for you, primarily related to CSS. I used it for the first time and I love it. I guess no more checking designs and spending time figuring out how to write CSS for this. As long as designers heavily use the auto layout in Figma, this should be easily transferred to an actual CSS. It was getting late and I had to get up in the morning for work. Now it's the following evening and I'm back to programming my to-do application. I continue working on the main screen and the list of items. I have two lists for current and completed tasks, but I kept both in a single store, so some sorting is required. For now, I created a simple non-functional list. I will get back to the to-do list item later. In the next step, I focus on handling the data store events. Because of that, I have to handle events when an item is created, updated, completed, not completed, or deleted. Each case is handled differently, but I must do this only once. Generally, I have to either add a new item to either of the lists, remove an item, or move an item between lists. After that part, I can start creating the Figma component for the to-do item I created the day before, but as a web component. The list item doesn't have much logic, but it has plenty of stats. I know that Colin won't likely work much around styling and design, but I can't imagine not doing this as a professional. It's just how I work. After the to-do item looks pretty good, I can integrate it with my application. I can communicate with the application through DOM events, which is what the web platform does and has been doing since the beginning of it. At that time, I realized that Figma has an extension for VS Code, where I can preview the design directly in VS Code, which produces the same information as in dev mode. Cool stuff! The last element to build was the details panel with the editor that allows the user to edit a to-do node. It was pretty straightforward to make. I used the native form element for simplicity and the better integration with the browser. I hoped to wrap this up within 4 hours, but now it's evening number 3 and I still have some work to do. But I see the end on the horizon. Most issues at this moment were with styling, but then I realized that I made a design mistake. No one asks you to explicitly save a to-do item in any to-do application after editing it. I decided to remove the save and the delete buttons from the details view and update the to-do item in the store once a change is detected. Because of that, I can move the delete button to another place that feels more natural. I also decided to add a way to mark an item as completed from the details view as well. After some additional work and consulting the documentation at the Mozilla Developer Network, the application looks much better. Works quite well too. It was when I realized I had made a mistake when handling an event where an item should be moved between lists. I had to correct that mistake by making some changes to the code base. More styling changes to the item I created the evening before. We should be ready soon. It's time for a snack. Since it's Saturday, I can work during the day. That's what programmers like to do during the weekend. Code more. Then I discovered another bug. When I marked an item as completed, more list items would be selected than they should. I wasn't sure what was happening and it took me about an hour to fix this. Finally, I was ready to handle the last item related to app development, the initialization screen. The native progress bar is not what I had in mind. I was sure that Colin wouldn't add tests to his application. It is an integral part of writing the code. Sometimes it takes as much time as writing the main code, but it has to be done to keep your application stable. And this is when using Windows for development came back at me to bite me. I started having trouble running tests. The test framework, the Playwright, wouldn't recognize Chrome installation. I spent an hour reading questions at Stack Overflow and trying different things, but I realized it was time to go under Ubuntu if I wanted to finish this today. Alright, so this is me again, this time without 25x speed. So what happened is I had to switch to Ubuntu to be able to finish my tests, and I wrote those tests. For whatever reason, Windows wasn't very happy with my test framework, and I had to finish this under a different operating system. But what I didn't show you so far it's the final product. So I am back under Windows. So let me start the application. Where is it? It's in here. Okay. Okay, let's start the application, and I just gonna walk you through what I have done. So this is my ready to-do list. I have created several items, designed the to-do application. It's done. Okay, now I select the create a TS project, which is another item on my list. And I can use the mark as done on the other side to mark it as done. And there it is. The state has changed. So develop the to-do application. This is also done. I can show you that it actually changes the value when I leave the input. So let me add tests. And there it is, instantly. It is working. I can refresh. It is working. So, okay, it's completed, not completed. And also the delete. And it instantly deletes the item and the empty screen. So yeah, that's my application. I'm leaving it to you guys to decide who's done better. I really don't know by this point how Colin did. Well, we'll see.